The night had swallowed the small town of Ashwood, leaving only the flickering streetlights to cast long, trembling shadows across the cracked pavement. Autumn wind whispered through the skeletal trees, carrying with it a damp, earthy stench that clung to the lungs like a warning. Mara had driven all day to escape the smothering familiarity of her city life, hoping that the old Hollow Creek house she had inherited from an estranged great-uncle might offer her some peace. The estate agent's brochure had painted a picturesque picture, sprawling gardens, antique charm, and a quiet neighborhood. None of that had prepared her for the rotting, abandoned ruin she now faced. The house loomed like a dark sentinel at the end of a winding gravel road. Its windows were black, some broken, letting jagged shards of glass catch the dim moonlight. The front door sagged slightly, creaking as it swung with the night wind. Mara's heart thumped in her chest, a steady rhythm of nervous anticipation, and a strange thrill tingled down her spine. She parked the car and grabbed her flashlight, ignoring the sudden chill that made her skin crawl. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Every step she took on the warped wooden floorboards echoed like a warning through the cavernous rooms. Cobwebs hung like curtains in the corners, and the smell of mold and rot was overpowering. She shivered, brushing her fingers along the walls, trying to feel something familiar in the unfamiliar. The house felt alive, not in the sense of warmth or welcome, but in the way the shadows seemed to twitch with each flicker of her flashlight. She explored cautiously, each room revealing the past in grotesque fragments. A child's broken toy lay half buried under a thick layer of dust. Faded photographs stared at her with eyes that seemed to follow her every move. Then, in the library, she found a journal lying open on a desk. The pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with frenzied handwriting. The words spoke of rituals, sacrifices, and voices in the walls. Mara's stomach turned as a chill settled in her gut. She felt as though unseen eyes were watching her, and every instinct screamed to leave. But some dark, magnetic force kept her rooted to the spot dot as she read. A low, guttural sound rumbled from somewhere deep within the house. It wasn't the wind. It was something alive, dragging itself across the wooden floors above. Mara froze, the journal trembling in her hands. Footsteps, or were they claws scraping, moved in an irregular rhythm. She told herself it was rats, old pipes, or her imagination, but the sound grew louder, more deliberate. Panic rose, yet curiosity pushed her forward. She climbed the narrow staircase, each step groaning under her weight, the air growing colder with every floor she ascended. The upper hallway stretched endlessly, lined with doors that seemed to leer at her. One door at the far end was slightly ajar. A faint light flickered inside, golden and unnerving against the cold blue shadows of the hallway. Mara's pulse raced. She pressed her ear to the door and heard whispers soft, urgent, incomprehensible, but distinctly human. Then the door creaked open on its own, revealing a room that had been untouched for decades. The furniture was decayed, draped in yellowed sheets that fluttered despite no breeze. And in the corner, a figure hunched over, moving unnaturally. Her flashlight beam trembled as it fell upon it. It was human, or what had been human once. Skin peeled like old parchment, hanging in strips, revealing raw, glistening muscle beneath. Its eyes, pale and milky, locked onto hers. A gurgling, wet sound came from its throat, and it lurched forward with a staggering, jerking gait. Mara stumbled backward, her mind screaming in disbelief. She turned to flee, but the hallway seemed to stretch impossibly, the walls pressing in. The whispers escalated into a cacophony of voices, all speaking at once, some crying, some shrieking, some chanting. She ran blindly, every step echoing, the house twisting around her as if alive. Shadows stretched and reached for her, scraping along her arms, whispering promises of pain. Her flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into total darkness. Panic turned to raw, visceral terror. Something grabbed her ankle, a clawed, rotting hand that ripped through her jeans. She screamed, kicking violently, freeing herself, and bolted down the staircase. Tumbling to the ground floor, the front door was gone. In its place was a solid wall, cold stone pressing against her palms. She turned, her breathing ragged, and the hallway was no longer familiar. Doors had multiplied, stretching infinitely, each one pulsating as though breathing. A wet, metallic scent filled the air. She gagged, realizing it was blood-fresh, coppery, sticky, and it dripped from the ceiling in thick, glistening streams. Her stomach churned as the guttural sounds intensified, footsteps surrounding her from all directions. And then she saw them, shadows moving independently of light, shapes twisting, limbs elongating in grotesque forms. Faces formed in the darkness, screaming silently, eyes hollow and glinting. Something lunged at her, slamming her to the floor. Its touch was cold, slimy, tearing at her clothes. She fought back, clawing, biting, feeling flesh tear under her nails. Panic and pain blurred together, a horrifying ballet of survival instincts. She scrambled toward a faint light at the far end of what seemed like an endless corridor. Each step felt heavier, the air thickening, her lungs burning. The walls seemed to close in, squeezing, suffocating. The whispers had become a roar, voices, chanting her name, mocking, demanding something she didn't understand. The floor beneath her cracked, a thin layer giving way to reveal shadows writhing beneath. Cold hands shot up, dragging at her feet, pulling her toward the darkness. Finally, she burst into a room bathed in unnatural, flickering candlelight. The walls were covered in grotesque symbols, painted in blood, forming spirals that seemed to writhe. In the center stood a figure in a tattered robe, face obscured by a hood, hands dripping with viscera. The figure lifted its head slowly, revealing a face that was human and not human simultaneously, eyes burning, skin mottled, mouth stretched impossibly wide in a silent scream. Mira's scream echoed into the void, swallowed by the house as the figure stepped toward her, and everything went black. Mira's vision returned in stuttering flashes, like lightning revealing fleeting horrors. She was sprawled on the floor of the candle-lit chamber, her body trembling violently. The air reeked of iron and decay. Her clothes were torn, soaked in blood, hers and something else's. The hooded figure had vanished, leaving only the faint echo of that impossible scream resonating in the walls. Shadows danced in the corners, elongating unnaturally, creeping closer with every flicker of light. Mara knew she couldn't stay. The house had already claimed too much of her sanity. She struggled to her feet, clutching the journal she had found earlier. Its pages rattled in her hands as though alive, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. Symbols in the chamber pulsed faintly, like veins in a living body, and Mara realized in horror that they were arranged in a pattern of ritual. She understood instinctively that the house was feeding, thriving on fear, and every step she had taken had only strengthened it. She had to escape, but the house was no longer a building. It was a labyrinth of flesh and shadows. The hallway ahead writhed as she ran. Floorboards stretched like sinew beneath her, walls rippled like skin, and the ceiling oozed a viscous, dark liquid that spluttered across her face. Every breath she took was heavy with blood and rot. Something screeched from behind, a sound like metal tearing through meat, and she risked a glance. A figure, grotesque and half human, half shadow, limped toward her. Its face had split down the middle, exposing raw muscle and teeth jaggedly protruding from the flesh. Each step left a bloody smear, and the thing's eyes, wide and unblinking, bore into her soul. Mara stumbled into a room that should have been a kitchen, but was now a massacre. Rusted knives stuck into the walls like grotesque trophies, and the floor was a slick carpet of coagulated blood and entrails. The smell made her gag, and she barely avoided slipping into the black puddles. Her hands shook as she fumbled for a weapon, picking up a broken broom handle, its jagged end a meager defense. She didn't care what it was anymore, anything to keep the claws away. The creature lunged. Mara swung blindly, connecting with a sickening crunch. It screeched, a gurgling, choking noise, and she ran again, ignoring the wet, sticky sensation of something clinging to her legs. Behind her, the house moaned, walls contracting, floors bending, as though it were alive, breathing, hungering. She realized she couldn't just run. She had to fight to survive, and maybe even unravel the terrible secret that bound the house to its horrors. She darted into what appeared to be the main hall. Here, the house's true nature revealed itself. Portraits of ancestors lined the walls, their faces smeared with blood, eyes following her with accusatory glares. The chandelier overhead swung violently, shattering, raining glass. Amid the chaos, Mara glimpsed movement. Dozens of twisted, screaming shadows converging, limbs broken or fused in impossible ways. They dragged themselves along the walls, floor, and ceiling, closing in, shrieking in unison. Mara's mind raced, searching for a way out. Then she remembered the journal. One page, highlighted with fresh blood, contained a sketch of the house and a single instruction. The heart must be pierced. A ritual, she realized, but by whom? Her uncle? The house itself? She didn't care. She knew instinctively what she had to do. She sprinted toward the basement door. The stairs were slick with old blood, each step a risk of collapse. She descended into darkness, feeling her way along the walls. The air grew colder, denser, and a low, wet growl reverberated from below. Her flashlight, flickering weakly, revealed a pit in the center of the room, filled with writhing shapes, hands, faces, bodies fused in impossible ways, all reaching upward, silent screams frozen on their faces. The house's victims, the ritual's offerings. Mara's stomach twisted in terror and nausea. From the shadows, the hooded figure appeared again, raising its arms, hands dripping with flesh and gore. "It hungers," it whispered in a voice that sounded like dozens speaking at once. Mara's grip tightened on the broom handle. She couldn't run anymore. She had to strike. She charged at the figure, stabbing blindly, and felt the tip pierce something soft and warm. The thing screamed, a sound so unearthly it shook the walls, and Mara was thrown back, landing among the writhing forms on the floor. Blood coated her face and clothes. Then she saw it, the heart of the house. A pulsating mass of tissue and shadow, throbbing at the center of the basement, veins running through the walls, floor, and ceiling like an organism. Mara understood with sick clarity. The house was alive, feeding on fear and flesh, each soul adding to its monstrous body. Her fear solidified into determination. She leapt onto the mass, stabbing repeatedly, feeling it writhe and shriek under her assault. Pain shot through her hands as claws and tendrils lashed out, but she kept going until the pulsing slowed, the shadows screamed, and the walls shuddered violently. A blinding light erupted, and the house convulsed. Mara was thrown back against a wall, dazed, ears ringing, heart hammering. The shadows dissolved, screaming, fading into silence. Blood pooled around her, dripping from the ceiling like rain. Slowly, the house stilled, lifeless, broken. Silence pressed down, heavy and absolute. Mara's hands were covered in blood, her breath ragged, her body trembling. She staggered outside as dawn broke, the first light washing over the ruins of Hollow Creek House, but the horror lingered. The streets of Ashwood were quiet, too quiet. Mara looked back once and thought she saw a shadow flicker behind the broken windows. A reminder that some horrors never truly die, they wait, patient in the dark dot as she drove away. She could feel it watching, the pulsing heartbeat of the house echoing in her mind. She whispered a prayer she didn't believe in and vowed never to return. And yet, somewhere deep down, she knew that the house would call again, and next time, it would not let her go so easily.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.